Penn State has a problem. Their names? Michigan and Ohio State. The Wolverines and the Buckeyes have seemingly been the only ones standing in the way of Penn State glory. They've kept them from reaching the heights the Nittany Lion faithful have been hoping for since James Franklin took the head coaching job. Franklin's Penn State teams have never really lacked talent and are regularly considered Big Ten contenders, and yet only once has James Franklin brought a conference championship home to Happy Valley. 9 years ago.
Takes the snap, heads back, and that's it! Penn State wins the Big Ten title!
Entering the 2024 season, the narrative is the same as it's always been. Penn State once again has everything they need to win a Big Ten championship and achieve their first ever college football playoff appearance. The question remains, though, would they do it? Before we answer that, let's rewind a little. September 2nd, 2023. The Backyard Brawl is back as West Virginia comes to town looking to start the season off with a statement win against Penn State. For the Nittany Lions, the narrative is again the same. Penn State has everything they need to win the conference championship except the ability to win big games. The other question was how much of a step forward Penn State quarterback Drew Allar would take. Allar would answer those questions by throwing for a season high of 325 yards, and Penn State would go on to beat West Virginia in convincing fashion, 38-15. It was the start of a 6-game stretch of blowout victories for James Franklin's squad, until finally they traveled to Columbus for a chance to put the big game jitters narrative to bed for good. Penn State held their own for most of the game until a late touchdown by Ohio State's Marvin Harrison Jr. put the game out of reach. Once again, James Franklin loses a big game.
Touchdown!
3 games later, they'd have a shot at redemption against Michigan, and once again, they would lose thanks to a late back-breaking touchdown from Blake Corum.
Great touchdown, Wolverine! 30 yards!
But that was 2023. Coming into 2024, Penn State's expectations remain the same. Win the Big Ten, make the playoffs. To do that, they'll still need to beat Ohio State, but lucky for them, they don't have to play Michigan. Again, the season opens with the Backyard Brawl, and again, Penn State wins in convincing fashion. But this time, the consecutive blowouts that graced the early part of the 2023 season would not repeat. The next week, Penn State would be trailing Bowling Green State University at halftime and require some second-half heroics from running back Nicholas Singleton to secure the comeback victory. Penn State would go on to demolish Kent State, but the next few games would call Penn State's offensive capabilities into question, especially Drew Allar's 3 interceptions against a floundering USC team that took Penn State into double overtime.
Touchdown, USC!
Against Wisconsin, things started looking even more bleak, as Drew Allar was knocked out of the game late in the first half with a lower body injury. Wisconsin even led at the half, but a third-quarter pick 6 would give Penn State the lead for good.
14. Lock from his end zone. It's picked off. Jalen Reed. Touchdown. Huge play for the Penn State defense.
Following that was the big one. A trip to Columbus to once again put to rest the notion that James Franklin can't win big games. Penn State jumped out to an early 10-0 lead thanks to a pick 6, but the celebration would only last until early in the second quarter when Ohio State quarterback Will Howard connected with Brandon Inniss for the 21-yard score, and Ohio State would take the lead for good.
Ohio State, Brandon Inniss.
It was one of Penn State's worst offensive performances of the season. The team that looked like an offensive powerhouse against West Virginia and Kent State was held to 0 touchdowns and only 3 second-half points. Penn State would respond with convincing wins against Washington, Purdue, and Maryland, and despite a thriller against Minnesota, the Nittany Lions did find themselves still very much in the Big Ten title race. All they needed was Ohio State to lose.
Down and 9. Do or die for Ohio State. Howard in trouble. Incomplete. Ohio State turns it over on downs. And the Michigan Wolverines will shock the college football world.
In shocking fashion, Penn State's prayers would be answered by none other than Michigan. The Wolverines would achieve one of the most stunning upsets in recent college football history and knock Ohio State out of the Big Ten championship game, paving the way for Penn State. Oregon came into the game on a mission to show that they belonged in the Big Ten. Penn State came in just hoping they could finally win the championship after almost a decade-long drought. Oregon jumped to an early 14-3 lead, but Penn State would not go down without a fight. At 4 different points in the game, Oregon held double-digit leads, and every time Penn State would at least close the gap. With less than 2 minutes left in the game, Penn State would even be in position to secure their own shocking upset. Instead, Drew Allar throws his second interception of the game, and still the Big Ten title would elude them.
They're the 5 seed, number 3 in the country according to the rankings. Who has the 6 seed? Penn State. So Happy Valley will host.
One goal was still very much in play for Penn State, a college football playoff appearance.
It's the 11th seed against the number 6 seed, SMU.
Despite the loss to Oregon in the Big Ten championship game, Penn State would be selected and would start the playoffs against the ACC runner-up Southern Methodist. 2 early interceptions returned for touchdowns and a rather baffling 4th down decision by SMU's quarterback would seal the game for Penn State in the first quarter. Next up was a quarterfinal matchup against Boise State and Heisman snub Ashton Jeanty. Penn State got off to a hot start, but Boise State would put up a fight, almost overcoming a 2-score deficit. However, a third-quarter touchdown by Tyler Warren and a late dagger by Nicholas Singleton would put the game out of reach for good.
Nick Singleton, house call, touchdown.
Penn State may not have achieved all of their goals for the season, but they do find themselves in a college football playoff semifinal matchup against Notre Dame, a position that not many Penn State fans felt they would be in after the Ohio State game. The question is, are Penn State's victories against SMU and Boise State enough to put the big game failure narratives to rest for now? Many argue that neither SMU nor Boise State should have been in the playoffs to begin with, so were those victories just Penn State beating an inferior opponent? Or is Penn State actually good enough to win the national title? Thanks for watching our short documentary on the 2024 Penn State Nittany Lions. Do you think they're good enough to win the national title this year, or will James Franklin lose yet another big game? Let us know your thoughts in the comment section and subscribe so you don't miss our future documentaries.
Chasing him. Official was right there.
Parker, oh, it's picked off. Tom DeLuca gets his interception. It's a pick 6 touchdown.